Okay, so in chapter 17th, we continue to speak about the inner making of the Benoni, his weaknesses, his strengths, how to really achieve complete mastery over our animal soul, understanding our emotions, where they come from, how to use them, how to channel them. This chapter, chapter 18th, which we said there's no coincidence, the author of the Tanya, I think, was very intentional in putting different ideas under different numbers of chapters because even numbers mean something. So, for example, the heart of the Tanya is Perek Lamed Bet, the 32nd chapter. The 32 in Hebrew is Lamed Bet, which spells out Lev, because it really is the heart of the Tanya. It speaks about how the love that we have to have towards one another, but a love that is a soulful love, not a physical love. And so it is here with chapter Chai, 18 is Chai, as we know, this speaks about really the life of the Benoni, all that is good in the Benoni. It also, as you'll see, will speak about how the real life of a person is his soul, and it's very close to him. Ki karov elecha davar meod, which is the verse that he also quotes at the very beginning. It's a life that is attainable, not a life that is far reach. It's actually very, very close to us. All we have to do is open up our eyes and open up our hearts and open up our inner makings, and then we'll find it. We have to search it overseas or on Tibetan mountains, but it's really in here. Let's continue here at the bottom of page 93. Does anyone want to read this approach? Okay, this is the introduction of Rabbi Steinsaltz to chapter 18. This approach, anyone,
I'll read.
please.
Okay.
Oh, go for it.
This approach that one can and should generate internal feelings or something approximating them is the book's central proposition. The current chapter will expand on this with regard to faith as well. This is a service to God based on exercise, physical exercise, but primarily spiritual exercise, the soul's patiently repeated efforts to arrive at eventual truth. This technique conflicted with the nearly universal Hasidic demand for spontaneity, for strongly and immediately felt emotion. The author of the Tanya may have been unique in denying the need for spontaneity, seeing it as nice when possible, but not crucial. The model of the Benoni, practically speaking, is someone who is not spontaneous, whose love is self-manufactured. And if the love is not actualized, then at least there should be a rationale for love, an inner resolve of its necessity. Of this inner resolve, the author says, the thing is very near to you, in your mouth and in your heart, that you may do it. For what is expected is not a transformation of one's soul, but a redirection of one's actions and thoughts toward realizable and effective goals. This is possible for every person.
Right. In general, yeah, Rabbi Stein's outlines the two schools of thought of how to achieve this closeness with God, or how to achieve that internal feeling, as he calls it, in which we actually feel God and want to connect with God. So one school of thought is that you have to divorce yourself from the boisterous noises of life, and you have to go out in the fields. And Breslev Hasidim, for example, do that every day. They go out to the forest, to the fields. They found some place that's completely isolated and preferably in nature because that's where you can feel God. And then you'll be inspired, and then you'll start connecting. The author of the Tanya is of the second school of thought. Yes, you can do that. There's nothing wrong in going out to the forest and trying to feel spiritual there. But author of the Tanya says that really you can achieve that level of connection at any time. Not if you go outwards, but if you go inwards. I've said it many times. I don't understand why there's an expression in English that says let's go out. Just as we have an expression of let's go out, we should have an expression of let's go in. It's not just when you go out that you can really enjoy yourself or really connect. It's particularly when you go in. And that's Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi's school of thought. All you have to do sometimes is go in. Forget the forest, forget the nature, go into yourself. Go refine yourself. Go find that point within you that wants to be connected with God. Go listen to the thirst of your soul. Sometimes that's a much more difficult effort, but it's also an effort that will lead you to a lasting connection, not a connection that is spontaneous and therefore is fleeting, comes and goes. And secondly, this type of exercise also makes God readily available at all times because you are with yourself at all times. When you depend on a forest, when you depend on something, it's not always readily available. When you're looking to go out, maybe the out is not attractive now. So it's not always available. But if you're willing to go in, that's available at every moment. And that's really what he touches upon here in chapter 18. And that's what the Tanya really is all about. We said is the opening line of the Tanya, quoting from Deuteronomy, that God is very close to us. Why the need to go out? Go in. Just go in. And yes, it's a lot of work because sometimes there's a lot of layers. Sometimes there's a lot of trauma. Sometimes there's a lot of dimensions of self and of emotions. But still, if one has the courage and the persistence and the wisdom to do it, then that level of connection is unmatchable, even to the connection that is found in a forest and in nature. So that's the idea. How to achieve that, we'll speak about 9 in chapter 18, but that's his school of thought again. Let's continue maybe just one paragraph here in this chapter, Margot, and then please, and if anyone wants to share a few words, please do so.
Okay.
But go
In
ahead.
this chapter, the author touches on a deeper level of this demand and discusses the case of someone who is unable to achieve intellectual love and awe. His love is then only the hidden love, which is above the intellect. To explain more adequately and more precisely the word very in the verse, but the thing is very near to you. The verse not only states that the thing is near to you, but that it is very near. The emphasis seems inappropriate. Very close appears too excessive. Near, as the last chapter described, is a product of the mind ruling the heart. For any person who has brains in his head, this chapter elucidates how it is very near for everyone, even one unable to mediate intellectually.
Right. And that's the emphasis of the Tanya, speaking of that neshama that is indeed very dear, very near. Again, just to quote the Hebrew, Ki karov elecha davar me'od. Me'od means very. It's even more than very. It's extremely, I would say. Um, you know, we say um, we use it in modern Hebrew in all sorts of ways, but me'od means very, very. So what does it mean that it's very? What it really means, and Maimonides speaks about this also in his introduction to the Mishnah, what it means is that when a person is stripped of any external and internal layer, if all you come down to is your very essence, and that's what you're facing, then you'll see that your very essence is very close to God. Not just close, but very close to God. You know, you see that. I was just telling Jordan about that yesterday, but a very dear friend of mine, not to deviate yet too much, but it really again expresses this idea. A dear friend of mine, I'm happy, Margaret, to share you the YouTube link and share the story. But a dear friend of mine that I studied rabbinics with in Milano, Italy, 25 years ago, maybe even more, in 1999. Menachem Dadon is his name. I've stayed in touch with him, and he leads the Israeli Center of Sydney, Australia. And his daughter was at the Bondi Beach exactly a week ago when this massacre happened. And she was under the bridge, and she could have stayed under the bridge, that infamous bridge where the terrorists were shooting from. And she could have stayed and be safe there. But then her eyes saw something that she'll never forget. She saw a woman that was shot and in her head, and she saw another man that was shot in his stomach. And next to those two were two young children, maybe 5 years old or a little bit more, a little bit less. And she decided to run to them, to protect them, even though again she was safe. And she ran to them and she covered them with her own body. And she started saying to them, it will be good, it will be fine, you don't have to worry, She started saying the Shema Yisrael with them, and she got shot. She got shot in the leg.
Mm.
And in spite of a horrific pain, I don't know what it is to be shot in the leg, and none of us should ever know, but very painful. And in spite of the physical pain and the emotional pain, she said, I have to stay calm, if only for these children. And she called the police while she was covering those two children. And after many rings, the police says, sorry, we're getting too many calls. We can't help you. So she called the father, my friend. And her father said, just stay where you are. I'm coming. It took her father 15 minutes to get there. And he immediately attended to her wounds. And she was rushed to the hospital afterwards. And then they made sure that the children found a safe haven too. And only in hospital did she let it all out? Did she start crying and everything else? And she told her father, I had to stay strong for those children. And I don't know where that strength came from. Even in the interview, she says, I was petrified, but I channeled. She uses that expression a few times. She's 14 years old, such a hero. She had to channel her terror into protection, to the protection of those children. And why am I thinking of that? Because we find it to be true that when a person is stripped of everything and you face life and death, and um, you're really back to your essence, to all that you have in life, and that is life itself, then there's something magical that happens, and it happens because it's the divine that you're experiencing. That's who we are at our very core. And when you experience that divine, you realize, oh, it is very close to me. It was always very close to me. Yes, life gets in the way, but it's always there at our essence, as she so beautifully portrayed. And really, she's just amazing because of that, because her divine that was is very close to her, as it is very close to every one of us, just took the center stage and led her to this heroic action. Heroic is even an understatement. But that's the idea. We see that in history so many times, that when you're stripped of everything and all you are left is life itself, it, that all you are left with is life itself, then you realize it's very close to you. The divine is very close to you. Then you can even channel terror into protection. So that's the idea here. And I'm happy to send you that link, Margot,
Okay.
if you can share it with the class. It's really so inspiring. Okay, let's continue. It should be recognized. Is that where we are?
Yes.
Yeah, it should be
Should be
recognized.
recognized.
Unless, please, if anyone wants to share anything, please. Okay.
It should be recognized with certainty that even the person whose understanding in the knowledge of God is limited. As mentioned, one way to reach love and awe of God is through intellectual meditation and absorption in the knowledge of God. Obstacles arise, though, and foremost among them is limited intellect. This is not necessarily an assessment of one's entire capacity. It could be a deficiency specifically in the knowledge of God and an inability to grasp such abstract matters. Another stumbling block is a lack of information. To contemplate God's greatness, one needs, besides mental acuity, to know what to contemplate. Perhaps the person has not studied and acquired knowledge, or maybe the problem is that he knows what he knows has little to do with his life. He is acquainted with the concept and has read about it, but it remains foreign to his experience, restraint to his attempts to personalize in any substantial measure.
Right. In many ways, yeah, we have something just brilliant, and I think every person should know this, but every psychologist should be teaching this. There are really two steps to finding that connection and living with it, that divine that we spoke about. One, as Rabbi Steinsaltz would say very often, that a lot of learning is unlearning. You have to unlearn a lot of things. Very many times we learn things and they become our lenses through which we see life itself. And but we don't realize that those things are very limiting. And sometimes it just takes this tremendous effort to go back to our baby stage, and we can see everything in the most innocent way. We're tarnished by life. We're tarnished by ideas in life. We're tarnished by what we see in life. And therefore, very often, the learning must be unlearning, unlearning everything, trying to go back to this point of complete purity and innocence. Now, how to do that? For that, you need step two. You know, we have the choice of what we fill our minds with. And very often we fill our minds with all sorts of what they call in Yiddish Narishkeit. You ever heard that word? Narishkeit. All sorts of nonsense. And then we're surprised that we're in a bad mood, or we're surprised that we're negative, or we're surprised that things are not going well. Well, it's simple because your mind is at capacity, but you filled it with all sorts of nonsense. And that affects the way you see things, that affects the way you behave, it affects the way you comport yourself altogether. So what do you have to do? Once you've unlearned the learned, once you've returned to that stage of purity and innocence, don't be contaminated now by filling your mind again. You've just emptied your mind. Don't fill it now with nonsense. Fill it with true contemplation in God. Fill it with good things. By the way, just to be very, very practical, that should happen every morning. We're not just talking about, some seminar we go to and then we come back and whatever. This should happen every morning. Every morning we wake up somehow like a child with a fresh and new perspective on life altogether, because God, thank God, Baruch Hashem, God gave us the gift of sleep, and sleep in many ways resets us. But very often, what do we do when we wake up in the morning? Whether it's immediately, which is horrible if we do that, or even afterwards, when we're having our coffee, is that we go to the news. Let's see what happened. Let's see what I missed out. We go to our emails. We go to, and God emptied out, He unlearned you throughout the night. And really, you're going to fill your mind with such nonsense that is going to affect, it's going to affect your day. Instead of filling your mind now, why don't you learn some Torah, some Hasidic teachings? Instead of having coffee with newspaper, with your online publications, why don't you have coffee with the Parsha of the week? Why don't you have coffee with something that can truly fill your mind with God Himself? Because that really changes the day completely. So that's step one, and step two happen every day. We unlearn through sleep, and then it's up to us how we fill our minds. We must learn and fill our minds with that which is holy. But that's on a everyday basis. There are times in life, I would say Elul, the month of Elul is a month like that. Or sometimes we go through a crisis and we need an Elul even in the middle of the year or at the beginning of the year. And that's when we have to say to ourselves, okay, let's sit down. Sometimes you can't do it over an hour or over a day. Sometimes it takes a week or a whole month. That's why we have a whole month of Elul. But that's when we say to ourselves, okay, there are things that are bothering me, consciously or subconsciously. So let me try to unlearn them. Once you've unlearned them, then you learn the divine. Then you try and really fill your mind with that which will carry you, will elevate you, will make sure that you are kikarov, you are connected to that which is very, very close to you. So these are two very, very important stages, again, that happen on a daily basis, every single morning, but that happen also maybe in a more profound way in times of life where we have to reset ourselves, so to speak. Anyway, I'm the only one speaking here today, so please feel free to share your thoughts, your disagreements, your comments. If you need
I
it,
was just
yeah,
gonna share, we read a book in the book club, The Positivity Bias, a few months
yeah,
ago, and someone suggested to have that also on the bedside table for going to bed and reading a few vignettes from that book to help reset the mind before sleep also.
yeah, it's a
That
great
was,
book. Yeah, I love that. Daily meditations when you go to sleep, but certainly when you wake up in the morning before you jump on your phone.
always.
And yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it does put you positivity bias, like its name. Its story is about positive thinking. Yeah, very good. He's a good friend of mine, Mendel Kalmanson, who wrote the book. He lives in England. And I remember that he interviewed Rabbi Steinsaltz. Speaking of the Steinsaltz commentary, when he was starting these types of books, he has other books like that. So that book is also inspired by Rabbi Steinsaltz.
Amazing. It was a really wonderful
Yeah.
book. I think everybody would benefit from picking it up and reading it over and over. I'm trying to do that. So,
Yeah. Thank you, Susan. Okay. All right. Let's continue, unless again anyone else wants to add something. Bottom of page 94.
And who has no heart to comprehend the greatness of the blessed Ein Sof, to produce therefrom awe and love of God. One person lacks knowledge of God, another lacks heart. He cannot get past his intellect to the place where meditation becomes feeling. His contemplation may remain forever grounded in intellect, divorced from emotion. Much has been written elsewhere regarding the passage connecting mind and heart and about the resulting flaw when this passage is blocked. It is a narrow transit way corresponding to the throat in the human body and subject to distortion. Our spiritual experience is an interactive chain of events. Thoughts focus on a topic and create imagery. Images develop and expand to influence emotion and energize action. Between the passages in this chain, from the initial thought to feeling and deed, the constriction of the throat, otherwise referred to as Egypt, with its correlative chief butler, chief baker, and the captain of the guard, is one of the primary obstacles. The blockage stems from man's connections to his body and the body's desires.
Right. There's a lot in this little paragraph here, particularly those analogies of chief baker, captain of the guard, chief butler. But the idea is of a deeply Kabbalistic one, and that is that the heart and the mind and the heart, mind first, the mind and the heart have to work in unison. And they have to work in unison in a way that the mind feeds the heart, not the other way around. And the mind that is cold and therefore calculated and analytic and is able to sift between the good and the bad, between the wise and the foolish, can then activate the heart with emotions towards the good that it sifted from the bad, towards the wisdom that it sifted from the foolishness. If you're only cold and calculated, but you have no heart, then you're missing the whole connection. If you only have the heart, then your connection might be contaminated because it didn't go through the filter of the mind. So it could be filled with also negativities, whether you know about them or not. And therefore, there must be a complete connection here between the mind and the heart, in which the mind leads the heart. The feeding of the heart by the mind goes through what's called the neck, which is in Hebrew is also referred to as Mitzarim. Mitzarim or Mitzrayim, which is the word for Egypt. That's why this analogy. Mitzrayim means limit. So it's narrow, and it's purposefully narrow because there's a lot going in here. And again, you want to sift the good from the bad. And when you want to send down something, you can't send down both the good and the bad. And you'll have a big net. And then there's no point. The whole point is to really narrow down all that is going the year to only channeling the good, even terror to protection, like we spoke about. For that, you need really a narrow neck that then can feed the heart with all that the mind sifted and provide the heart with only good things.